What is up, Steelers Nation? Thank you so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. I'm Noah Strackbine, joined always by my main man, Steven Thompson. Find us on youtube.com/All Steelers Talk or subscribe anywhere you get your podcast. The Pittsburgh Steelers, well, life is rough right now. After falling to the Indianapolis Colts 30-13, their playoff hopes seem very, very slim, and somehow a loss to a winning football team in Indianapolis seems worse, might be worse than the losses that preceded it against the Arizona Cardinals and the New England Patriots. It's a rainy, miserable weekend here in the city of Pittsburgh. It was a good Sunday football if you were not a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, because there was plenty of good games and plenty of good action on the television. Unfortunately, none of them turned into the outcomes that the Pittsburgh Steelers needed after suffering a loss to Indianapolis. We'll dive into who needs to go, how much of this house needs to be cleaned out, who should start at quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and where they currently stand and what their biggest need is moving forward. Like I said, rainy day here in the Burgh, but it's another day. It's a good day. We're nearing Christmas. It should be a holly jolly week, but maybe we'll get there come Friday. How you feeling, my friend?
Yeah, it should be a holly jolly week, but I'm sure it will not be in the Steelers locker room every time we visit them this weekend. But yeah, I think it's funny to think, because I think we've sat on this podcast and we've talked about 5 different of these. I mean, how many losses do they have now? 7? No,
7.
8.
7-7.
Yep, 7-7. I think like 5 of those we've been like, well, this is the worst loss of the season. Can't get any worse than this. And little did we know, it did get worse than that. So, it's weird to sit here and just think, I don't know. We've just gone through the roller coaster all year, and now we feel pretty firmly on a decline. Feel like this roller coaster is coming to a stop, but we're just sitting right at the bottom.
Yeah, I agree with you. Don't see any more ups coming for this Pittsburgh Steelers team. It is crazy to think, just like you said, worse losses. We've said that 4 or 5 times. We've said that 3 times in a row now. Like the Arizona, that's the worst loss of the season. New England, definitely the worst loss of the season. And then Indianapolis, a winning team, a team that was tied with you in the playoff race, hands down, I think without question, the worst loss the Pittsburgh Steelers have put on tape. A team that has seemingly given up at this point in the year. They now hold, I want to say, a 3% chance, according to the New York Times, to make the playoffs if they beat the Cincinnati Bengals. I actually have it in front of me here. That just climbs to a 7% chance walking out of week 17. Now, if everything goes right for them, because I ran that scenario this morning too, I was just trying to see, hey, can the Pittsburgh Steelers possibly make the playoffs? Is this still, is everything still alive? If best case scenario happens, and I mean everybody in the AFC loses except for the Cleveland Browns, who play the Houston Texans, who, if you're the Pittsburgh Steelers, you'd rather the Browns win than the Texans. Those odds climb to just 15% heading into week 17. Tough time to be the Pittsburgh Steelers. Don't see anything turning around. We'll dive into what needs to change for this team and really who needs to go. I think at this point, the big question is, if you're going to clean house, who you cleaning it with, who you getting rid of, who you moving on, and how you trying to replace them. But the bigger question, and the more pressing headline right now for the Pittsburgh Steelers, is week 16 is upon us. Mike Tomlin is set to talk in a couple of hours. I have a hard time imagining that he'll name a starting quarterback today, as he's going to let a competition play out between Mitch Trubisky and Mason Rudolph. And I almost guarantee you the door will be left open for Kenny Pickett's early return from ankle surgery. But I got to toss the question to you here. If you're the Pittsburgh Steelers, week 16, playoff chances very slim, but still alive, who you starting at quarterback against the Bengals?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's got to be Kenny Pickett if he's healthy. I mean, that's, you don't wave the white flag. You don't give up. I understand what the injury is. It seems like it was severe, but there are people fighting for their jobs out here up and down the roster. And I think it would be doing everyone a disservice to, have Kenny Pickett be healthy and not roll him out. But, assuming he's not, and I think that's where the real kind of choice comes down to, and that's where the real hard decision comes down to. I don't think you can roll Mitch Trubisky back out there. And I know I'm changing my tune from, I don't know if it was last week or a couple weeks ago. I was going to say
a week ago, you were on the Mitch Trubisky over Mason Rudolph train here.
I was, but I mean, Mitch just doesn't really give you anything. I think he gives you just poor decision making. He turns the ball over. Like, at the very least, Mason can maybe hang on to the ball, possess it, give your running game a chance to get going. I don't know. At the very least, he's different. And I don't know, Mitch is just not doing any of the things that I think you need a backup quarterback to do to keep you in games when you're kind of a team in a spiral. He's not. I don't know. I think he's trying to throw. I think Mitch a lot of times is trying to throw his team out of a slump, and I don't know if he's good enough to do that. I don't know if this team is good enough to do that, and it just has never been the right decision. So I think you need something more steady right now, and Mitch is not steady. And look, I really don't know if Mason Rudolph gives you anything different or anything better. Definitely not. He gives you something different. He's definitely not going to give you anything better. I'd venture to say, but I mean, Mitch has been a detriment. You know, he's been actively harming the team. You know, like with the way he's turning the ball over, and you just can't have that with a backup quarterback with a team who's spiraling. You know, you can't add to the spiral. You have to help pull out a little bit. You have to at least stabilize things, and Mitch has not done that really at all.
No. At this point, and I agree with you. Like half of it is the play on the field. You're just not getting what you need to out of Mitch. Just not saying that you're getting what you need to out of Kenny, or you're going to get what you need to out of Mason Rudolph, but you got to test something new. I think the bigger part of this is that, you know, you watch that game on Sunday. Every time the camera turned to Mitch on the sideline after he got pulled, he just looked defeated. Like at this point, Mitch is just done mentally. There's nothing there anymore. And that stinks because, like, I do think his time in Pittsburgh absolutely beat the crap out of him. Like you show up, everybody hates you immediately. People are booing you right from the jump. I mean, remember the first day of training camp last year, the first pass he threw was intercepted and he got booed immediately. Like that's as bad as it gets. And it never got better. So you sit here and you just look at the situation. You just go, like, mentally, Mitch doesn't have it right now to get you out of whatever you're in. And I don't think I agree with you. I don't think that Mason does have what you need to get out of this. And I don't think he's going to make things all that much better, if better at all. I just think right now, like you've tried Mitch. Like you saw what you could get out of Mitch Trubisky. It didn't win. Now you got to try Mason Rudolph. Like that's just what you do in the NFL. Every team does it. You just keep trying new quarterbacks until one clicks. And this week it's got to be Mason Rudolph. That being said, I agree with you. If it is Kenny Pickett, if he's healthy enough. Now, what the question is, what is healthy enough? Like, where's your baseline? If he's 50%, if he's good to go, but that let's just say it starts at 50. Like I am 50% recovered. That's good enough for me to get back out there. Because you got to remember, I mean, I don't even know if you were there, if you were at that game. I guess you wouldn't be. It was New England. The New England game, as we're waiting to get on, like he's rolling by, waiting to get onto the elevator. He's rolling by in one of those scooter things with his foot in a boot. Like that's a week and a half ago. I don't know if he's ready enough to play, but reports say that he's going to try to this weekend. Let's say that baseline's 50%. 50% is like good enough to play. What percentage of 100% healthy are you putting him at before you feel comfortable putting him out there? And I get that people's jobs are on the line, but at the same time, if you're the Pittsburgh Steelers, like a part of you has to be thinking, well, we can't make this worse. Like if Kenny suffers a serious injury that sets him back next year, now we're in even bigger trouble than we are right now. What percentage are you putting him at to put him out there?
Well, it's just a tough question because I don't know at what percentage is it like, you know, I'm not a doctor. I'm not working on Kenny right now. So I don't know like at what percentage that ankle can withstand every hit that he's going to take, you know? And I think with a guy that has Kenny's injuries history, I mean, I don't kind of buy into the injury prone kind of narrative. I know people have talked about that this season, but I mean, with his injury history, you got to assume that there's no 100% safety, you know, like it's not completely risk-free anytime you throw him out, even if he feels that he's 100% recovered from this specific injury and this, you know, specific ankle thing. So I don't really know. I mean, like I think I'm inclined to say that, you know, even if he's below 75, you know, even if it's just 50%, I feel like you're inclined to throw him out there. I just think I don't know if Kenny's telling you that he's okay, that he's good to play, that he feels good enough. If he gets cleared to play, I think he's got to be on the field. I don't know. It's a little bit of, I'm going to end up arguing against myself probably at some point during this show, but you got to try. Like you have to continue you have to finish the season out. You have to play hard. You have to kind of put everything into the season before it's officially over, and it's not officially over yet. So I think, you know, as far as next week goes, you gotta keep fighting, and you gotta keep Kenny in there if he's even I think remotely ready to go.
I agree. I think that as long as he's medically cleared, you put him out there, you see what happens. After this week, like if you lose to Cincinnati, which is certainly a possibility, if you lose to Cincinnati, it's over. Like I don't care. I don't care where he's at. You're sitting Kenny Pickett. Like he could be as close to 100% as possible. You're just saying, look, man, you're done. Season's over. Mason, you're going to start. Who cares about the rest of it? Because if you lose this week, like your playoff chances are pretty much zero. And maybe it is zero. Maybe you are like officially eliminated, depending on how everything plays out. But if you lose to Cincinnati, I'm sitting Kenny for the rest of the year. But this is like the last hurrah. Got to try to turn things around, and the Steelers are going to try to do that. I don't know if they're going to be capable of doing that. Unfortunately, in the NFL, just like you said, like with all the talk of who's going to come, who's going to go, is Mike Tomlin's job on the line? There's a billion questions. Nobody in that facility right now is sitting around thinking long-term health of Kenny Pickett, which stinks for Kenny Pickett, but also like in the grand scheme of things, like the Steelers are still looking at this, and I bet you there's a large chunk of them saying, look, we could still get into the postseason. We got to try to get into the postseason. And they're going to, if Kenny's out there and he gives them their best opportunity to do so, man, dude, obviously joking here, but how bad does that suck for Mason Rudolph, man, just can't catch a break in Pittsburgh. Even given an opportunity, like this should be his week to shine. Kenny Pickett's like, move over, pal. I'm limping out there. No worries for me. And Mason's right back to the bench. Kenny goes out there. Mason number 2. Is that your backup?
Yeah, I mean, I'd have to assume so, right? Like, I mean, for all the same reasons we talked about, like Mitch just isn't it, man. And he's not the type of guy who has proven that he can keep you alive in a situation that's pretty dire. Like he's not, I don't know. I don't even know how to describe it. Like he's not helping pull you out of a spiral. He's not helping stabilize things. In fact, he's just been making things worse, quite honestly. Like the turnovers, man, like
the turnovers are bad.
Know. Yeah, like if he misses a few throws, like whatever. Like I've seen Kenny Pickett do that any number of times, but like Mitch is just way, way too aggressive when he doesn't need to be, when this team can't afford for him to be. And it has just only made things worse. I don't even know how to phrase this. Like, I think as far as backups in the NFL go, I mean, he continues to fall. Well, it's like, it's weird because he continues to kind of like fall down the power rankings if you had one, just because there are all these random backups who keep coming in and playing really well just around the rest of the NFL. But man, you just figured that he would be able to provide you more than that because he had been a starter before. He had been a guy who he'd led a team to the playoffs before, and
he's a Pro Bowler. He was a Pro Bowler in the NFL. I believe he won a playoff game. Either way, he was there. I agree. There's a part of me that thinks it's the Pittsburgh Steelers, that it's just like the culture and the offense and the poor coaching and the scheme, and that just crushed any chance Mitch Trubisky had at like regaining a career in the NFL. And I'm sure he'll go somewhere else, but yeah, his time in Pittsburgh, I agree. I think it's up. It doesn't help anything, and you already know what you're getting, and it's not like it's a risk. It's more of a risk to put him back out there than it would be to put Mason out there if you need to this week against the Cincinnati Bengals. Let's move on. Other topic of conversation. Guys, we have gear. New merchandise from AST to Mooth, Bleed Black and Gold, Kenny to George, and plenty of others now at our new website, blackandgoldapparel.com. And the coolest part, 50% of all profits at our store go to UPMC Children's Hospital here in Pittsburgh to make sure that we are giving back. We can't thank you guys enough, and we want to show you guys how thankful and how grateful we are for everything by making sure that we do our part to make the community here in Pittsburgh better. Go check out everything. We tried to make everything new and improved, from our designs to our quality of sweatshirts and t-shirts and everything else. Let us know and check everything out at blackandgoldapparel.com. And as always, thank you guys for everything. After the loss to Indianapolis, everybody and anybody is talking about what the Pittsburgh Steelers could do, where they can go, the conversation of culture, which we last week on Friday had a massive conversation about how maybe the culture in Pittsburgh has been dead for a long time because maybe it's more of an abstract thing and it doesn't actually exist. Maybe the culture of the Pittsburgh Steelers shifts every day or every year because of the people that are in the locker room and the people that are around the facility. But if right now you're looking at the culture or the attitude of the Pittsburgh Steelers, it is as bad, as piss poor as it comes, and it seems to just be getting worse. And I get it. Like at times this goes back, and I think a large chunk of it goes back to the Steelers' struggles are not because of today, but because of how they created this team and for how long they ignored their problems. But they are sitting here today with a serious issue, and everybody wants that issue fixed. And I think a lot of people after the Indianapolis game have a thought in their mind, and maybe I'm alone on this because I have the same thought as many others, is that I think to a degree you have to clean house and you have to get rid of some of these guys that are more of an issue than they are productive. And maybe that means coaches, maybe that means players, maybe that means trades, maybe that means cuts. I want to ask you, I got a long list of them. I put them out yesterday, and there's a part of me that a lot of people agreed. There's other part of me that's like, man, I wonder how many people on this list actually saw their name, and I have to go talk to them tomorrow. You see the Steelers locker room today, the Steelers coaching staff today. If you were to clean house, what are or who are you getting rid of, and why?
Yeah, I'm looking at the coaching staff first because I think one thing that this 3-game losing streak has kind of underscored and revealed is that this is just a poorly prepared football team. You know,
Yes.
like from kind of top to bottom, they just don't look ready to play really when they come out of the gates in most of these games. And that's why I kind of put that more on coaching. So obviously starts with Mike Tomlin at the very top. Like he sets the tone for everything this team does. But I mean, you look at the issues at receiver, like just the we can call them attitude issues, I guess, but like the effort plays as well. So I look at Frishman Jackson, like I think he's gotta, you got to at least consider that one. And just, I think you look at the talent in the receiver room too, and see them kind of underperform, and you have to look at Frishman Jackson as well. Pat Meyer, I think has to be looked at as well. Cause just
100%.
the procedural stuff on the offensive line, like just doesn't make any sense. It shouldn't happen this late in the season to a team that honestly like, I get it. Broderick Jones is young. Dan Moore is pretty young, but like most of these guys are veterans, and like the low snaps from Mason Cole. Why has that been a continued issue throughout the year? So yeah, Pat Meyer, I think the offensive line's got to be reconsidered. Mike Sullivan, look, the quarterbacks have got, like, we put a lot of it on Matt Canada when he was here, but the quarterback development has been non-existent, if not regressive, over the past 2-3 years. I mean, it just hasn't been good enough. And so I think Mike Sullivan, for, as good as his relationship is with Kenny and the other quarterbacks, and how you don't want to upset, like, and kind of rock the boat with a young quarterback like Kenny in there. I think those are kind of the biggest ones I'm looking at, because I look at the coaching staff first instead of, there are definitely some players who I think are worthy of considering moving on from, but I look at the coaching staff first because I still think there's talent here. And I think that the right coach could mold all this talent into something workable, if at least not better than what this team is now. And just, this coaching staff is not making the best of this group that they have right now. And that's why I think I look at coaches first. And it's just like the nature of these losses too. Like I said, all the penalties, all the lack of effort plays, it's just, when you get down in the second half of these games and it just looks like guys are giving up, like that's part of why I look at the coaching staff first and say, look, this is something rotten from the top up, that there's something clearly wrong here that needs to be addressed from that standpoint.
I agree 100%. I think it starts with the coaching. I think there are only maybe 2-3 coaches that are like 100% secure. You don't get rid of them. I think everybody else is on the chopping block. And I think Eddie Faulkner you keep around, because even if Najee Harris isn't a superstar, Jaylen Warren might be, and you did that. That's Eddie Faulkner. I think Eddie Faulkner is a good coach, even if he's not a good offensive coordinator. You've seen this fly around in here. Number 2, the other 2 coaches, I think there's 2 more that I'm like 100% keeping, or 3 more. That would be Danny Smith, not get rid of the special teams coordinator. You could say what you want about Presley Harvin, and Presley Harvin's one of the guys that, at the end of the season, I don't think that you bring Presley Harvin back. I don't even think you give him an opportunity, just because the guy steps up so well in training camp. Like in those battles, when you bring somebody else in to compete for this job, Presley Harvin's a superstar. In a game, he just doesn't get the job done. So Danny Smith, I'm keeping 100%. Eddie Faulkner, I'm keeping 100%. Grady Brown, I'm keeping as well, just because Joey Porter's got his issues, but Grady Brown's made a lot out of a little, and he's found some guys. Trenton Thompson might not be a superstar, but this guy shouldn't be anything, and he's contributing on defense. You got Minka Fitzpatrick and Devontae KZ, who, I mean, Devontae KZ's got an issue, and I don't think he should be a starting safety in the NFL, but for the role that he was put in, he's done a pretty good job with it. And they found some other guys along the way who've done the same thing. I think Grady Brown's there too, and then I think Carl Dunbar, 100%. Like, Larry Ogunjobi, people have mixed feelings about. The rest of that defensive line is so deep that on a weekly basis, you don't know who's going to be inactive just because I think they just pick a name out of a hat and they say, hey, this guy's not it. But I think the rest of them, I think everybody else, top to bottom, especially the names you mentioned, Mike Sullivan, Frisman Jackson got to be real high up there. Pat Myers got to be real high up there. Like, if you're looking for a culture change, if you're looking for more productivity out of guys who have talent, yeah, you got to get rid of a lot of these coaching staffs members, and those are the ones that I'm starting with 100%. I think I'm putting, I'm not saying this is a guarantee. I'm not saying that. I say that I'm going to consider it. If I'm the Pittsburgh Steelers and I'm thinking about cleaning house, I'm considering putting Mike Tomlin on that list as well.
Oh yeah. I mean,
I think you have to.
Right. Like I forgot. I meant to say that too. Like, it's, we've had the Mike Tomlin conversation before, which is why I didn't dive, so deep into it already. But yeah, like if you're talking about, kind of wholesale turnover of assistants, I think your head coach has to be included in that decision as well. The guy who brought all of these guys in,
yes.
if your assistant coaches aren't working out, that kind of falls on the guy who hired them to a certain extent as well. So yeah, Mike Tomlin is definitely in that conversation. I also think, as far as people who I don't think, deserve a ton of blame for how the season has gone, Aaron Curry, I feel like we can give him a little bit of a pass.
He's been here a year and he's
right.
I mean, at one point he had a great room, now he's, and I put that more on Mike Tomlin and Omar Khan because they came into the season, and I said this in a piece that I put out on Sunday. You came into the season with Cole Holcomb, Quan Alexander, and Landon Roberts, which, like, great. That's great three, but let's break those three down. You signed Quan Alexander at the end of training camp. So your objective was not to have Quan Alexander. It was Mike Tomlin and Omar Khan and whoever fighting to think that Mark Robinson was, like, capable of being an inside linebacker, and then he's not. And then you came into the season with those three, and then if one of them goes down, your only other option is Mark Robinson, who you brought Quan Alexander in at the end of training camp because he wasn't good enough to play. Like, that goes right back to the decision-making of whoever is signing, outside free agents and drafting guys and whoever to just, like, I don't think you get rid of Mark Robinson. I think he's a good special teamer, but there's every year before this one, the Steelers bring 5 inside linebackers into this roster. This year they just said, hey, screw it. We'll bring 4. And that 4th guy, we will sign literally anybody off the street, anybody we could find to come and play above him because he's just not capable of playing inside linebacker. Like, that doesn't go on Aaron Curry. That goes on the rest of them. I agree with that one. I think Terrell Austin, is like a maybe. Yeah. But, I think that's the decision of Mike Tomlin and what way you go there, because Mike Tomlin, if we're going to be real, Mike Tomlin runs that defense. Like, that's Mike Tomlin's defense. It's been Mike Tomlin's defense forever. You want to put blame on somebody first, you put blame on Mike Tomlin before you put blame on TA. But I agree. I think Mike Tomlin's like the top of that list. I think that's obviously a much bigger decision than everybody else. But you want to talk about culture, you want to talk about lack thereof, you want to talk about, bad decision making and getting your team to a spot where it is right now, where everything is just sinking so fast. It all falls on Mike Tomlin. Mike Tomlin did it all. You cultivated a culture where guys get away with anything, where you don't have real punishments for players, where you constantly defend guys, and you're always, we could go back, dude. We got blasted in the middle of this season, absolutely roasted by the Pittsburgh Steelers fan base because we called Tomlin out on his BS about lying to the media when it comes to accountability. Now we're at the end of the season, and it's like, oh man, maybe if Mike Tomlin was accountable and didn't lie and didn't just say things to give people stuff, that the Steelers would be in a better situation. It's just he created the culture of the Pittsburgh Steelers. He did this to himself and to everybody in this locker room. So I think Tomlin's certainly at the top of this list. I got a couple of players that I think I'm tossing out there too that, are big names.
Lay it on me.
I'm and again, like, I think that it comes with an ideal situation here. Like, you got to get a good trade, a good return in this trade to make these moves. But I think there's a couple of these guys. I think George Pickens tops that list. I think he is the first player that I'm trying to move on from this offseason. Zero questions asked. That guy has given up on this football team completely. That is not somebody that you want in the locker room. That's not somebody that you're going to, build around. And to be quite honest with you, at the beginning of the season, when things were starting to happen and there were issues and there were Instagram likes and, social media nonsense and, taking down all of his Instagram posts and then, blatantly lying about the whole situation time and time again. You looked at it and you said, well, he is an extremely talented individual. Then he gets mossed by Nick Cross and everybody's sitting there going, well, maybe it's time to move on from George Pickens because the acrobatic catches are not outweighing the nonsense that he is bringing to this football team. And I think you could get a really good return for George Pickens. I think that you make your culture 10 times better immediately without George Pickens. I think he is the first player that I'm trying to move on from. Deontay Johnson's probably on that list, but I don't think you're going to get as big of a return. And to be quite honest with you, Deontay Johnson's got issues, much less issues than George Pickens. And I think if you're going to have one diva wide receiver, Deontay's a milder version of a diva wide receiver. And that's just what, I mean, it's a battle of both evils, but in the NFL, it kind of seems like that's what you have to pick from. I'm picking Deontay Johnson over George Pickens. Najee Harris is my other big one. That's the other one that I'm moving on from. I think you could get some return. I think I look at it like this. A lot of people say things like, why does Najee have to answer to the media? Why does he have to address these things? Minkah Fitzpatrick is a prime example. Minkah Fitzpatrick blasts his teammates, blasts the culture of the Pittsburgh Steelers, calls everybody out, says people are not in this to win, has no issues with it. The next time he speaks, they ask him to address it. He addresses it and says, I don't know if they heard it. I don't know if they're going to stand up to the challenge that I presented them. Najee Harris is a guy where he'll call people out. He'll call this team out. He did it in Cleveland, and then he'll hide for the rest of the season. And then he'll blame the media, or he'll blame the fan base, or he'll blame the offensive line, or he'll blame this person, or he'll blame that person. Najee is not a true leader in the Pittsburgh Steelers locker room. I think at this point, it's more of a distraction and more of an issue for a guy that, like Jaylen Warren's the better running back, or very close to the better running back. And I just think that you could it's harder to find a Jaylen Warren in the NFL than it is to find a Najee Harris. And I think if you could get something for him, I think you're moving on from him. And those would be the two big names that I'm starting with before I go anywhere else.
Yeah, and I think Najee fancied himself as like a leader, as a real big leader in the locker room, and I'm sure he was, but you can't be selective about when you're a leader, especially when, like you said, like you pointed out with Jaylen, like there's a guy right behind you who is just as, if not more talented. So, like talented and productive. So, like you need to provide something of value. You need to give this team a reason to keep you around. And I don't think Najee kind of shrinking and I think that's the thing. Like, if he didn't want to talk to the media ever, I think that's more understandable. But he wanted to be a leader. He wanted to be a guy whose voice was heard, who wanted to call people out, and that's fine. But you have to do it all the time. You can't be selective about, oh well, this week I don't have anything to say. Things didn't go how I kind of imagined they would, and so I'm not going to address it. I'm going to pretend
or I got backlash, or my coaches heard that I called out Matt Canada, and then because somebody said something to him, and now it's the media's fault. Whereas somebody said something to Minkah, and Minkah looked him dead in the eyes and said, "Yeah, am I wrong?"
I meant everything I said, yeah, and he he owned it, and he was like, yeah, he had no, and also with Minkah, it's like Minkah puts the proof out there that he is kind of buying into his own message,
Yes.
Like he's the one out there with a broken hand. He's the one out there I don't know, Minkah, I've never questioned Minkah's effort. I never questioned his commitment. I never questioned that people listen to him when he tries to be a leader. And I think Najee is still relatively young, so he might be kind of finding his voice in that sense and everything. But look, if he wants to be a leader, he had to do it all the time, and he hasn't done that this year.
Yeah, I agree. And then you look at the Mitch thing too. I mean, there's little examples everywhere, but remember when he was asked about Mitch's leadership, and this isn't the first time. Kenny has said that he's brought the guys together, and Najee has made sure to clear up that he and Kenny have brought guys together. And then Mitch is he's asked about Mitch's leadership, and he said, "It's good. It's fine. I guess." That's just That's where he stands. There's a reason that, and again, like I'm not trying to just like go off here, but you just got to put it all together. There's a reason that this guy was a captain last year and that he wasn't a captain this year. That's voted on by his teammates, and it's the same teammates that were here a year ago who decided, nah, we'll just go with one. I think that says something.
Yeah, yeah, and I think you also raised a good point about George. Is this that like not to take us too far back, but I mean, look, George spent the better part of last week telling us that he's not running the right routes. They're not sending him deep enough. Yep. And the biggest play of the game, of his game, he gets sent deep. He gets put in a situation that he tells us he loves, that he tells us he thrives in those jump ball situations. And he doesn't come down with it. Like, what else am I supposed to take away from that, Like, you get given the opportunity that you've wanted, and you don't make the play. I don't know what any, like, I thought it was dubious from the start when everyone was talking about last year about this, George is always open, just throw him the ball and he'll come down with it. I was always extremely dubious of that proposition. I didn't think that was the best way to approach things at all. And look, it gets proven out there. Like, yep. This guy is not playing up to his own image of himself, but also the image that he had tried to tell us, don't worry, it's there. It is some other reason why I'm not performing at a certain level. It's not me. It's not my issue. And it's just none of the things that George has told us about himself, none of the things that other people have told us about George has really kind of come to fruition. So I think I agree with your assessment that like Deontay is far from the biggest problem in that receivers room. And if you had to keep one of them, like I absolutely know who I'm keeping.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And at that point, I don't think everything gets fixed, but you remove a lot of the real negative headlines that surround the Pittsburgh Steelers on a weekly basis. And like, you could even like, again, just to keep talking about Minkah calls that team out. It's not a negative headline. It's people take it as a totally different attitude of just Minkah blasted his teammates after this game. And everybody's like, hell yeah, Minkah. That's what we need that, Najee and George say stuff. And it's just always a very, very negative connotation around those headlines and what comes with it. And, Mark Caboli compared him to Ben, Le'Veon Bell, and an AB in his story after the game. And he said that somehow these guys are worse. And I think that is a clear sign from somebody who has been here for a long, long time that it is time to make those adjustments. With that said, we'll see where this season goes, but say the season ended today. You're the Pittsburgh Steelers. You're Omar. Thank you. Khan, what is the biggest need of the Pittsburgh Steelers? Where are you going first? If you free agency, the NFL draft process starts, the position or positions you are circling, where are they and who are they?
Yeah. I mean, this is just, the
whole team
tough,
is
right.
An answer, but more specific.
Yeah. I really struggle with this one because I think, like you said, like the entire team needs something different, needs yes. new blood, whatever. But I mean, like if we're thinking about one position that could give this team a fresh start, a hard reset, I don't know how you can't think of the quarterback position. And I don't think Kenny, I say that as someone who does not think that Kenny's bad. I think Kenny has potential and has a future, and I think he could be really good. But if we're just looking for one, like, player position, right? That's what we're talking about. Yeah, if we're looking for one position on the field that could give this team a completely new start, I think you got to think about quarterback. I mean, look, like I think corner, like as far as like what they need overall, like when we're looking at the draft next year, like offensive line and corner and inside linebacker and maybe defensive line, like there are all these different needs that this team has. But I mean, thinking about, I just think a quarterback, a something that could give this franchise, an immediate shot in the arm, that could give you some reason to believe that there is something that they are working towards, that there is a future that they are working towards. Yep. I think a new quarterback, a young quarterback gives you that kind of hope, and gives you that kind of sense that, I don't know, that this organization is looking in a different direction, that they are dreaming big and that they are thinking about something different. I think that's kind of the only way you do that with just one player or one addition. And so that's why, I mean, I don't think quarterback is the most pressing need, kind of in real life, as we sit here and as we go to the offseason. But
yeah,
if you need a shot in the arm, I can really only think of one way to do that with one additional player, and that's getting a new young quarterback who you think can be a star.
You hit the nail right on the head. Like, I should have yelled preach when you said that it shows that they're dreaming big. Like, that's it. That's exactly it. The Pittsburgh Steelers have dreamed so small for so long and have been so content in their little tiny space under Mike Tomlin and for so long that it is time to just say, hey, look it, man. We need to just shoot for the stars and hope that it works. And if it doesn't work, guess what? It's not worse than where we are right now. And at least we took a shot. I think that was the thing, is the Steelers have been so scared to miss out or so scared to take a step backwards that they forget that they need to continue to take steps forward. And they have found themselves in a very pleasing and content space of mediocrity, really. And a quarterback is your best shot to just take that leap forward and throw a leap of faith out there and say, hey, look, maybe this works out. And if it does, fantastic. That is a complete game changer. I'm going to go, like you said, we should keep this to one. I'll name two because I think people are going to name two. And that is the offensive line. I think Mason Cole is a fantastic dude. I hope he stays around to some capacity just because I like talking with him. I like seeing him in the locker room. He's a good dude. Mason Cole's got to go. You need a new center. You need a superstar center. Like, I don't care where you get it. Some people say this draft class is loaded with centers. Great. Get one. First 2 rounds, maybe 3 rounds. If you can make some crazy trades, boom, beautiful. Go get a center. Second one is a right tackle. Dan Moore, again, I think you keep him till the end of his rookie deal's over, and then you see what's going on there. But move Broderick to the left side, get a right tackle, and then just, at that point, your offensive line is good enough. Like, you run through that, and you're like, oh, that's, it's a pretty good list. If it doesn't work out, it's not because they didn't try. And I think that's the best thing. The Steelers haven't tried. They haven't given their full 100% A game to putting an offensive line together. They've just kind of pushed it along and said, well, we got Broderick in the first round. We did. We moved him to right tackle, but we got him. And we signed a 30-year-old Isaac Seumalo, and that definitely helped, even though Kevin Dotson is phenomenal in LA right now, playing the right side of the offensive line instead of the left side. Who would have thought that one? Oh, wait, everybody except for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think that you look at the offensive line and you improve those things, and total game changer. And then inside linebacker, anybody, Cole Holcomb, if he's healthy and ready to go, and I think you keep him around. I liked what I saw from Cole Holcomb at the beginning of the season. Anybody else not named Landon Roberts should be on the streets at the end of the season and go find a new home in the NFL. Sorry, but you're like, Landon Roberts is, I don't know what the team MVP is going to look like this season. I'm sure TJ Watt's going to win it. It should be a Landon Roberts. It should 100% be a Landon Roberts. That guy has single-handedly done everything he possibly can to keep that room in check. I think those are the two positions. If I'm starting tomorrow, outside of quarterback, that's obviously one. But if we're going 2 and 2B, offensive line, inside linebacker.
Yeah. I mean, inside linebacker would just be, adding as someone who could be a stud long-term there would just be a luxury the Steelers haven't had since Ryan Shazier. Right? Yeah. And the offensive line, I like that one because you can do a lot with a good offensive line, Like, you can cover for a lot of deficiencies with guys who can block consistently all the time. Like, I mean, you see it, like you saw it in Dallas, for a long time. Like, you saw it, I'm trying to think of other examples, just building the line before you build the rest of the team usually works out pretty well, quite honestly, because you can make a lot of people look really good with a decent offensive line.
Yep, I agree. And the Steelers haven't tried to do that in a long, long time, and they're getting called out weekly. It's bad when everything's sinking and Terry Bradshaw's talking and going, you know what, they need to draft some linemen. That's what they need to do. And you're just like, yeah, all right, Terry, I appreciate you. With that said, hopefully the Steelers listen, but we'll see what happens. It's a very important week for the Pittsburgh Steelers season. There will be plenty of news, plenty of action, including everything going on today when Mike Tomlin takes the podium at 12 o'clock. With that said, find everything that you will need throughout the week at allsteelers.com. We're heading out of here. Thank you guys so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. Make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube, youtube.com/allsteelerstalk. Check us out anywhere you get your podcast. And as always, and most importantly this week, find all of your Steelers news at allsteelers.com and all of our pick coverage at InsideThePanthers.com. Hopefully it cheers up and the city of Pittsburgh becomes another beautiful day in the Berg. Until then, peace.